Hello and welcome to another episode of the Midierror Meets podcast, the monthly music podcast where we talk to a wide range of people from the music world. This month I'm speaking to Andy Collins, who is a synth and electrical repairman and engineer based on the south coast of England. Andy's fixed a ridiculous amount of gear over the years. We do actually cover how many things he's fixed. He's worked for the Chemical Brothers, he's fixed stuff for Gary Numan, for Metronomy, even midierror has been a customer of his now and again. He's a really, really cool guy. I caught up with him very, very recently on another hot summer's day to talk about his career, his influences, and the first question I asked him was about his musical beginnings.
Dad was quite into music, and he had a decent sort of home hi-fi and turntable sort of separate system, and from when he was young he had a little box of a box of singles, 45s, you know, and I had a look through that once, and I, without really knowing who any of them were, I just sort of listened to them and made a pile. Did I like it? Did I not like it? And went through like that, and ended up with about 10 out of 50 or 60 that I thought were amazing or really good. And it turned out like 7 of those 10 were by the Beatles, which I didn't really know that much about at the time. But obviously liked something about their sound. And then there were things like some rock and roll, Great Balls of Fire, Jerry Lee Lewis, Elvis, things that really sort of stood out and still do really. I think, you know, even obviously did for my dad as well at the time. But I think chart wise, we'd always watch Top of the Pops, and we'd talking about sort of start recollecting music about mid-70s really, so I can think of, you know, ABBA and things like that being in the charts, and I really like stuff like the 78, 79, the Jam and Blondie and Buzzcocks, that sort of thing when that came out. But I remember you know, some songs really stick in your mind. I Feel Love, for instance, first time I heard that.
Donna Summer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were on holiday as a family, and I suppose I was about 7 or something, and it came on in the car, and me and my dad and my brother, we just stayed in the car. We got to the destination, Mum got out, bless her, and shut the door, and we were just mesmerised by this sound that we'd never heard before, and we couldn't get out until it had finished, and then we were all saying, what on earth was that? You know, it just didn't hear any guitars or anything recognisable in it at all.
Exactly, you know. Yeah, it's Giorgio Moroder.
That's it,
right? Yeah. It is an incredible track. I think even now it feels like it's a modern track. It still hasn't lost anything in all the time.
No, it's incredible how quickly he got that sort of sound out of sequencer and some basic oscillators.
Yeah, I mean, we strive nowadays, as well, I'd say we, like, producers strive for like more gear and more things to expand what they do.
That's true.
But that's such a simple setup he must have had there for that, you know, maybe even a 16-step sequence that's running the whole way through that track. Yeah. Apparently
only bit that wasn't electronic was the kick drum. He got a drummer to do that with a sort of pedal and a drum, nice. But everything else was electronic. So
brilliant.
And it was a great song, of course, and beautifully sung, so it really took the world by storm, I think, and I remember that. And the next one to do that was probably what's his name? John Fox. He was another one that came out with some I think Underpass or something like that was very synth based. Other people were doing it, but they hadn't really got my attention. And shortly after John Fox, of course, was Gary Numan with Our Friends Electric. Again, that was another song that sounded just like from another planet. Yeah,
and he absolutely amazing. What sort of John Fox stuff were you listening to? Because I have to be honest and say I don't know probably any of his music, unless I know it by the sound of it.
Maybe, I think he was a bit like Gary Numan, but not quite as alien as Gary Numan managed to make it sound. But I think the song I'm thinking of was called Underpass, and I think people like Kraftwerk and stuff had done it before, but nobody really knew them. And I think Kraftwerk songs like The Model which later came out, were re-released from. They were made in the 70s and not re-released until in the 80s, once sort of synth music had become more popular. So they'd done it first, but the world wasn't ready.
Yeah. Just try it again.
Yeah.
10 years later, and then everyone goes mad for it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that was a great track. The Model. I have that on 7-inch, and it's probably one of the first records I bought as like a teen, going in charity shops looking for records.
Yeah. Right.
It's got such a vintage sound to it. It's incredible. Yeah, and Gary Numan stuff. I spoke to Ade Fenton a few months ago. I interviewed Ade Fenton, who said a similar thing about being inspired by Gary Numan and his record collection.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And then suddenly he became the producer for Gary Numan, which
that's pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah,
I think I'll do that.
Progression. Yeah, that's great. So yeah, it seems like electronic music had a bit of a took you.
Yeah, and I think even before electronic music, but the sound, like the Beatles sound, I think that sort of the opening riff to Day Trip and things like that, when you're not into music at all at a young age, and you don't know what's made that sound, that also they used to get written off as being electronic noise even in those days. How they made songs like Help, in one evening, and to make it sound as polished and weird as it does. You can break it down now and hear what's in it, but it's still amazing that they managed to make it sound like it sounds. It's very sort of upfront and exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Compared with everybody else, really. And so that inspired me to play guitar, which I started to play when I was 10, and still do. And then we had a piano at home. I was sort of self-taught on the piano, just to play that. And I made myself a drum kit because we couldn't really.
Oh, cool!
It wasn't very practical to buy one. We didn't have any space, so they said you can put it up in the loft, which wasn't very easy either because it wasn't boarded out really. But my dad worked in a place called Edwards High Vacuum, and they make components for vacuum industry. Where processes where you have to evacuate the air out of chambers and things like that. And they made products which used to be silk screened, and the silk screens were frames with silk stretched across them. And once I saw one of those and pinged it and realised it sounded quite like a drum. He used to get any unused ones for me, and I ended up sort of building a frame and supporting these silk screens in different places.
Nice.
I made a kick drum out of Meccano. I put some foil in the bottom of one of them to make a snare drum, and some various sort of biscuit tin lids and things for cymbals. And I turned a pair of drumsticks with a lathe at school.
Did you really? You even made the drumstick?
Yeah.
That is incredible.
I don't know why I didn't think about buying things, but we just didn't in those days. I think things were expensive for a start.
Yeah.
We weren't particularly poor or anything. We just didn't think of spending the equivalent of 6 weeks pocket money on some drums.
Exactly. Yeah, a lot of pocket money that you could. I mean, if your dad can get you a few snare drums and toms and a bass drum,
that worked enough for me to sort of learn to coordinate some drumming skills anyway.
Nice. And I love that you made a kick drum out of Meccano as well. I grew up with Meccano too.
Did you? Yeah.
I made a load of rubbish with it, but it was such a great tool, wasn't it? For the imagination. You could use it as something that would help you out in your life. If there's some sort of structure you needed to do something, you could use Meccano to make it. That's cool. That's really good. So I guess you developed your own collection of music, having explored that.
I sort of really sort of went crazy for Elvis first, actually. Even though he was not my generation, I still loved to listen to those early rock and roll songs. They're just the ones with the energy at that time. And there was a bit of a resurgence in sort of rock and roll style at the late 70s, with things like Grease and Shawaddy Waddy, all sort of the doo-wop era for the 50s came back. And so that was not unusual to be into that sort of thing at that age. But that sort of developed into the Beatles. At the same time, my brother, we agreed not to duplicate records because it's quite hard to save up to get them. You know, an album was you get 50p a week, and an album was $6.99 or something. So it wasn't something you took lightly, and you didn't get to hear it really. You had to sort of trust the luck that it was going to be good. You heard the singles on the radio, and then you'd hope for the best with the album. So you had to. Yeah. I knew I could buy all the Beatles back catalogue and I wouldn't be disappointed. So I sort of worked on that really, and the brother bought everything else. Led Zeppelin stuff and Pink Floyd and the usual stuff of the era that we would listen to between us then.
Yeah, it's great that you coordinated that.
Yeah.
Great. And so when did you get your first synth? What was your first synth? Do you remember playing with one, or where you first saw it?
I think it was, I've still got it actually, it was Sequential Circuits multi-track, which was one of the ones that they made when they were just trying to sort of jump on the bandwagon. When they came out with those sort of single oscillator chips on synths on one chip, you know, for the computer market really, so that you could get all the sounds for the games and things like that. They were all, I think they were involved in development of those sequential circuits. So they started to make some cheap synths using those, so single oscillator per voice sort of thing, and then you could get 4 or 5 to get a polyphonic single oscillator synth. It had a sequencer as well on it, which was great at the time because you just had to record everything at that time, but then you could make a a riff or a chord and start to build up some backing, and then stripe a tape with a SIMPTE code, which was like a FSK, frequency shift keying code, which would go on to one of the spare tracks of the 4-track, and that would drive a sequencer through MIDI, and it would all stay in time. You could then link a drum machine to that, and so you do live mix, and the drum machine would be live, and so with the sequencer and the keyboard, and you could free up the audio tracks for just things that you couldn't put in MIDI form, so you could get much better recordings quickly.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What's the format called for the tape?
FSK is...
FSK, I'd never heard of it.
SMPTE, I think it is.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay,
yeah.
Right. So you're recording like audio...
You're recording sounds like
yeah.
Well, it's just a timekeeping track. It's 2 different well, I think it's just one frequency or square wave or something, and as it crosses the 0 point, it recognises a new time, and then it sticks to that. Nice. So it's just basically a sync pulse from audio and then back in to the machine.
Right. Yeah.
I liked it, but then if you wanted to play a 3-note chord, you'd lost 3 of your 6 tracks on the sequencer.
Oh, really? Oh, no.
So basically you could have a 3-note chord going through, and then another 3 notes to do some melodies and harmonies. That was usually enough for a keyboard.
It's almost like the limitations of chiptune, isn't it? You know, making chiptunes on like the Amiga or the Atari ST, you had 4 channels of sound, one of which is just a noise channel, and then 3 of them, I mean, you've got to get drums and synths out of 3 tracker tracks.
Yeah.
So it was you had to be really resourceful the way that you made music, and it sounds similar in that regard as well.
Yeah, well at the time you think it's a lot better than what it was, so you don't realise you're being restricted. You think it's all opened out now, it's all a lot better, as it keeps getting better. Yeah, so you used to just have a little setup in the bedroom really and write songs at the time. I was always interested in writing songs and never found it a problem really. Some people don't seem to be able to do it, but it was just something that I did without thinking, and initially I recorded them on a reel-to-reel using sound on sound, you know, where you don't erase the last track, you just record again, and that way you can build sort of multi-track without any mixing. You just have to keep putting things onto the tape, and so I used to do that, and then you mix it down to a cassette, and then when it got a bit better, I managed to buy a Fostex 4-track cassette, which was pretty good. Still got that as well. And I say with that, once you start getting MIDI and sequencers, you could then use one of the tracks to synchronise all that lot. So that was how I used to record in those days.
Nice. And do you still have those recordings?
Yes.
No, right.
I'd like to dig them all out and get them all together one day, get them digitised and listen to them.
Yeah, I find it's amazing going back through your own tracks, listening back to the stuff you made, because there's so many memories inherent in each of those recordings. There's times and space and people inside all of them, and they may be like terrible tracks to anyone else, but to you they really mean something and they represent.
Yeah, it's true. It's interesting. Some of them you don't even remember doing because it's been so long. You listen to it and you think, is this even me?
Yeah, exactly.
And it comes back to you later, but initially...
Yeah, it's just one of those ones that you... I certainly have that with a few of my tracks, like, wow, did I really make that? Or like the production's amazing compared to where you are now, and you're like, wow, how did I make that sound? That was great.
Yeah, I remember I had a book written by John Peel, I suppose it was the same John Peel, a DJ, about how to record using a 4-track.
Right.
It had some really good basics about keeping noise down and getting the best out of guitars and vocals. And
yeah, I wonder what that book was.
I think it's something like recording with 4-track by John Peel or something. I've still got that somewhere as well.
Great.
Yeah, so I learned a lot from that, I think.
How did you go from like playing with them into the world of fixing them? And
I think I always had an interest in how things worked, and my turntable and things like that I would often take apart just to see what was going on, or if something went wrong with it I'd try and repair it. And the same, my dad was an engineer, and he was always happy to let me do that. He let me get electrocuted on the floor once while I was putting something apart. He obviously wasn't paying too much attention, but that was alright. I learned about touching mains. That's
you learned that
good lesson learned.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it could well have been a good lesson for him to allow you to learn. Whether he did it, but it was that.
I wouldn't have thought he would have done it on purpose, because it could have been pretty bad.
Fatal. Yeah.
And that's why we don't touch.
Now you're dead. See, what have you learned?
Yeah, a bit of a harsh lesson.
That's good.
But no, he knew a lot of things, so I could often ask him about how things worked, and satisfied my own sort of desire for the knowledge. But then I think as I finished school, I went to college and did a course that doesn't exist anymore, I don't think, ordinary national diploma in engineering, which covered sort of all aspects of engineering. Electrical, electronic, mechanical, and civil, and things like that. And that was a 2-year full-time course that was quite a good grounding, and that was equivalent of like 4 A levels, I think. So I could get into university with that.
Great.
Which I went to Brighton, what was then the Polytechnic, which is now University, Brighton University, but Brighton Polytechnic, because it's mainly technical college stuff then, or technical. I think a Polytechnic covered only technical subjects. So,
nice.
And that, again, I did a course which doesn't exist anymore, which was a degree in electrical and electronic engineering, but it was what they called an honours sandwich course, which meant that it was cut down. Your normal 3-year course was condensed into 2 years, and then you added 3 6-month work placements. So I don't know if they still do probably that side of it, I don't know, but they don't do a technical course like that anymore, apparently.
That's really good. I think a sandwich course, as I know it, is 2 years either side of a year placement, like in one particular place.
Right.
But I think that's really cool that you had 3 separate placements all 6 months in different places.
Yeah.
That's a much better insight into the industry, isn't it?
And it was very gruelling, actually. I can't say I enjoyed it much, because it
really?
was like a 40-hour-a-week course learning with lectures, and then instead of a summer holiday you get 6 months working, and then you go back to do it again for 4 years.
Yeah.
I was totally worn out by the end of it, but I did manage to pick up a lot of knowledge at that time, I think, which is probably the basis for what I do now.
Mm.
Even though they didn't really touch on music and stuff like that, a lot of the sort of generic electronics came up during the course, and as long as you try to understand most of it, it's stuck with you, really.
Good. And do you remember any particular project that you did?
What did I do? Actually, I know something I wanted to do, which was an automatic guitar tuner with motors and things that actually sat on the top of the machine heads, and would then sort of ping a string and then adjust the string until it reached pitch.
Yeah.
But when I put it forward, they said, "Oh, we don't allow guitar tuners." But I think that was just I didn't bother to explain how it was going to be different from a guitar tuner. I just said, "Oh, okay," which was a shame. I ended up making it was a computer-controlled system for pumping down vacuum chambers.
Right.
You have to switch in various pumps at different times because you can't use one pump to completely evacuate the chamber. So you'd start off with a roughing pump, and then you'd change to what they call a diff pump, and you'd have different pressure gauges which would switch in at certain times, and some of them couldn't measure some pressures and some could measure other pressures, so it had to be automated. And ended up building this had a little microcontroller, 8032 or something like that, as I recall. But yes, but I didn't actually finish it because it was a lot of work. I was halfway through coding it, I think, when we ran out of time. But
I see.
Yeah, I still did okay. I got a 2-1 in the end. But, and the placements, I worked at a place called Anglican Instruments in New Haven, which made temperature controllers for industrial temperature controlling situations. I worked in the test department there. And then the second placement was a place called Computing Devices, which, again, I'm not sure they exist. They were a pretty good company. They had lots of Sun workstations that were worth thousands at the time, probably very basic now, but decent CAD things. And they did military contracts. So there they got me... I designed the test pattern generator for the radar on the Nimrod aircraft.
Wow,
That was quite... So when you... obviously they didn't trust me with any of the military stuff, but if you press a button and then it came up with a test pattern and their little logo, and that you didn't have scanners in those days, so to get the logo onto a screen was quite a job. I ended up copying it off a piece of headed paper onto a large piece of graph paper, as I recall, and then each of the squares on the graph became a pixel, and then I would go through each pixel and write down a binary code for the grayscale of the pixel.
Right, for the grading of the
for the colour.
Wow.
So if it was white, it would be whatever it was, and all ones or the other way around, and binary or hex or something. So I just worked my way all the way through till I came up with the binary code to describe what I was seeing on the page. Yeah, so that's how
which is like a scan. It's like scanning something, but with the humans doing what the scanner would do.
It's amazing how you had to do things like that in those days, and that got written into an EEPROM or something like that, and it would be read out and appear at the top of the screen.
Yeah.
Along with the test pattern, which was basically sort of video things so you could see the screen was working properly. But
that's cool.
Again, I think I left before I finished it, so I expect someone had to sort out the mess that I'd started.
They go, oh no, that's the wrong way around. It's got all the colours are inverted or something like that. That's cool. It's really interesting that you wanted to do a guitar tuning thing, like a musical.
Yes, I was very much into music when I was at university, and I did a lot of recording at home, and constant playing and bands and things like that, and writing. But when I left uni, I was earmarked for a job in computing devices, so I worked there for 2 of the 3 placements, and I think they got into difficulties because there was a recession at the time, and they didn't take me on, so there wasn't any work, and I wrote to a few places but didn't get much response. So I joined a band, which was something to do, and then I also approached Bonner's music store in Eastbourne. They were a local music shop, and asked them if I could come in and repair some customers' equipment, once a week or whatever, and they said yes to that, and that sort of worked all right, and where I started getting used to the equipment, taking it apart and fault finding, and I also used to do it in my spare time as well. I rented a little space in a workshop in Howsham, where I would also try and get my own customers doing that as well, and I stayed with Bonner's for, I don't know, about 8 years really, going down there, and until it became obvious that it was better for them just to sort of pass it all directly to me, and I'd set myself up.
Definitely, yeah.
And which is how that started. But it was, 1992 that was, so when I started this business anyway. And
was it?
Systems,
That's one of my questions.
Yeah.
When did it all start? But 1992. That Bonner store's still there, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very big. They've done very
Yeah.
well. Yeah, Tony and Mike. It wasn't them owning it at the time, but they've really expanded it and kept up to date. They've got a big online presence. And it's very good.
That's incredible. So 1992 is when you sort of got off the ground on your own.
Antec was supposed to be Andy Technology, really.
Yeah. I only realised that
sounded good
the
at
last
the time,
few
but
days.
it sounds a bit dated now. And it
No, it sounds good. No,
doesn't really
sounds
describe
good.
what I do. But then it was systems as well, because I used to build. I didn't just confine myself to music equipment at the time. I wasn't sure that was a job at the time on its own, but so I used to do other industrial things with some background there, building what they call bake-out controllers and things like that, which would control baking of industrial chambers and things like that. I also worked for a company called Beauty Works, who made muscle toners, where you put the pads on and they flex your muscles. Yeah. I used to sort of a contract repairing those by the thousands. They sold them all over the world, and they suddenly 10 boxes would turn up, and I had to go through and fault find them and resolder them and change chips or whatever was wrong with them and repackage them and send them out again.
I see.
So I did that for quite a while.
And by that time you were used to the electric shocks, because you had that early one in your career.
Yeah.
So, and it's a much smaller shock, I guess.
Yeah, this one was not so bad. Yeah.
I remember those things, yeah. I think at some point I tried one. It's a really strange sensation, isn't it? Your muscle just tenses.
Triggers the muscle to tense on its own,
Yeah.
so I suppose it worked.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could have it just all day, couldn't you? Just tensing your stomach muscles or something like that.
Yeah, perhaps I should buy one. Yeah. I don't know if they can, I'm not sure.
But obviously the music was what I preferred to do, the music related stuff, because that was more interesting to me, so that sort of grew really. But I was going to say, the band I joined, the other guitarist stroke singer was good friends and sort of driver for Led Zeppelin's manager Peter Grant, who lived around here at that time.
Oh, right.
And so I met him through that and spent a lot of time with him. Just the three of us would sort of spend nearly every day together for about a year and a half or something like that, because I'd finished uni, and we used to just pot about in Peter Grant's Range Rover, and he'd tell us all Led Zeppelin stories, and
Great.
it's really good like that, and go and help him sort of sort out all his old, when he moved, to sort out his barn of all this old Zeppelin gear and hi-fi and reel-to-reel tapes and stuff. And,
wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, it was really good, because I wasn't really intimidated by him because of my age, I suppose, but it was quite, looking back at it, it was quite unusual. He loved my guitar playing, and he used to come and pick me up, and he'd just sort of ring up and say, "Grab your guitar, I'll be around in 5 minutes," and
Really?
he'd come round and it would take me to some sort of gig and get me to go up and play and stuff. So I sort of was like his little prodigy for a while.
That's brilliant.
He had me jamming with Jason Bonham and things like that.
Wow.
Which is quite good, yeah.
That's awesome.
And he'd support, it was a covers band, but he'd help out, advising us, and paid for some press photo shoots and things like that.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Where does he stay? Where is he now, Peter Grant?
Well, he died.
Oh, did he? Right.
Yeah, about 99 or something like that, I think.
Right.
It was well, it was obviously a shame because he wasn't that old, but he did have heart problems, and he was interested in me doing my own music, and I played some of it to him, and he liked it, and he actually, it was quite a bad story because he said, come round and play me some of your stuff, come round to the house, and in the Monday afternoon or whatever it was, so I started panicking a bit, and then I went back and started sort of remixing and sitivating things that I'd already finished. Really, yeah, thinking, oh, he's not gonna like that. He's not gonna like that. Maybe I should do this. And I started, and then it was about 2:30 or something, and I still hadn't gone. And he rang up, and my mum answered, and he goes, "Put me on to Andrew." And he goes, "I'm not sitting here like a cunt waiting for you." He's going, "This is business now. This is not friendship." I said, "You're gonna be here at 2:00. If you're not here, forget it." And slammed the phone down like real Peter Grant type style.
So you got the full treatment.
I didn't know that we'd said 2:00. That wasn't in my head, but anyway,
right.
I didn't get a chance to say anything, so we rearranged it, and I played it to him, and he said, "Yeah, give me like 3 songs that you think are the best, and I'll give them to a publisher, a friend of mine."
That's brilliant.
Which I didn't do for some reason.
Right.
I mean, I was really determined to make it in the music business, and that was a fabulous opportunity, but I just never felt confident enough to hand over the songs to him. So there was some psychological weird thing that stopped me doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess because he's been working with Led Zeppelin, that you know, that's huge, isn't it? That says a lot about your guitar playing and your talents, and you know, your persona, that he saw something in you that.
Well, thank you. Maybe, yeah. But I formed another band doing just my songs, which we gave him demos for that, and the week I gave it to him was the week he died, so we never actually heard what he thought about that.
No way. Wow.
But he also introduced me to Denny Lane, you know, who was in Wings with Paul McCartney, and he was in Moody Blues before that. So he was I was a big fan of his, being a Beatles fan, and he was in. He did a lot of stuff with McCartney.
Wow.
And Peter Grant's daughter had a baby with Denny Lane, so I hung about with him for a while, and he had a place in Windsor, so we went up there, and I remember he had one of the first Yamaha, what they call SY10s or something. It was a Vector synth.
Oh,
it was really nice at the time, and I remember taking up my little Akai 612 sampler and asking him if I could sample his Yamaha, and I remember him thinking, what? Who was this guy? But he let me sample the pianos off it and things like that.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, like the keyboard range, like the octave range of...
it's just a nice piano sound. It was quite a hard thing to get at that time, so I took my little rack mount sampler, which had a disc drive, and it was an 8-bit sampler, and he sampled sort of a few ranges, a middle C and a top and a bottom, and but it used to stretch the note either way, so it started to sound a bit odd once you moved away from the original sample, but that was good enough for me anyway. I was quite happy with that.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. And then I sort of temporarily formed a little band with Denny Lane. He did a few gigs and playing some Wings songs and some of his songs as well, which I was really pleased to do, because I'm a big fan of his, and chatting to him about Wings and being with McCartney and stuff like that.
And was that you on guitars?
Yeah.
Nice. Oh, good.
And because Peter Grant was behind it when we did some gigs, and he'd get everybody down, you know, like Dire Straits manager at the time, Ed Vic Norris, I think he was, and
that's cool.
Yeah, Gary Glitter and people like that there, you know.
Yeah. Wow. It's incredible, really. I mean, what an insight into that whole world. Like, that's
it was quite fortuitous that he lived around here, and apparently a lot of the Led Zeppelin stories are in this area. You know, Peter Grant had a big house up in Hellingly, which was where a lot of the parties and things, and apparently they signed to Swan Song Records in the Bowship Farm Hotel just down the road there.
Right.
And Denny Lane's Wings used to rehearse in the Hippodrome Theatre in Eastbourne. So there's all these amazing stories in this area, which seems like there's nothing happening.
Yeah, it does. I mean, particularly Eastbourne, but yeah, I think you're right. In Eastbourne, Pink Floyd would play the Winter Gardens, and
really,
a lot of the big bands, would do like seaside tours.
Yeah, I know the Who played the Winter Gardens as well, I think.
Yeah, it's got heritage, a lot of heritage, I think. I love to think of like the old promotional methods, like you mentioned Peter doing, to like get people in to come and watch. They've changed so much now for like, promotion of your music and the ways to get people to listen. But again, it's sort of a little bit like your company. It seems like you haven't had to really advertise what you do at all or push it. It's all been like word of mouth.
So yeah,
yeah,
a great deal. Yeah, even now I've got an online presence, but you can't always guarantee it. But I've always got more work than I can handle, so I almost keep a low profile really, because there are times I've counted up like 100 items waiting to be repaired and the phone ringing saying have you done it yet all the time, and that's not really the way you want to work either. You don't want it too successful unless you start trying to find other engineers that can do the work to the same standard, but it becomes more complicated then, I think.
Yeah, definitely. No, I mean, I heard about you through Paul at Luke Masters, who has a lot of stuff fixed by you, and he always spoke really highly of you and was like, he's the best guy in the business. And you fixed things for a huge number of artists, and even my friend's gear is here today. I've seen something that's owned by one of my friends, which is that's really cool.
I mean, there's a few of us. There are some other great people that do it in the country, but there's not many now, because I think you need such a large amount of knowledge that you're better off doing something else with that knowledge. I could have probably gone like my friend did from uni. He went to work for Ericsson, and by the time he was my age, had a pretty good business and a lot of, not business, but a good salary. So I think in terms of making lots of money, it's not really the right business, but it's something I enjoy. Yeah,
and I think that's what's important, isn't it? Like that you enjoy it and you're passionate about it, and you're connected to it, and I think like you care about the instruments that people bring in.
Yeah, and there's some gratification in getting something working, and you feel like you've achieved something. It feels sort of a little glow inside. Till it fails again, but no, it's usually that's the reward really, rather than the money. Obviously you need money to survive, but
I think that's a really good skill. I mean, we talked a little bit on the way here about like the dying art of fixing things, that people don't really fix things nowadays, and it requires a lot of perseverance, a lot of determination. You've got to sort of overcome a lot of obstacles to get to a position where you can fix things. So how have you developed those skills? How have you developed those skills over the years?
It's mostly just keep doing it really, and try to learn from each job. But I think you have to have an idea of what's going on when you open something up, so that even before you start touching anything, pretty much what you're going to be looking for, or what area it sounds like the problem is in. And especially it's a lot easier now with the internet. You can pull schematics up easily. In the old days you used to write a letter to somebody and wait for it to come back in the post, but now nearly everything is available online, and that makes it a whole lot easier to fault find. And a lot of the electronics that are used are generic, so you see the same things in lots of different circuits, and you can still buy a lot of the the Logic ICs and things like that are still available, and they were very prolific in the 80s and 90s, I think they're getting absorbed into bigger chips now, so it's getting harder to fault find. It's fine if you can get a new board and replace it. That's okay, but that only works for 10 years or so until it stops being supported. And so there's a sort of period now, I think, where it's getting quite difficult, probably from late 90s, somewhere around there. If you've got a digital system that's not working in some way, it can be quite hard to fault find. And if you do fault find it, it's probably some large scale integrated chip that you can't really replace very easily if you can find it, and it might have some sort of factory programming in it as well, which you'll never get to know what that was or be able to do it again. So there are things now which I think will be difficult in the future.
When you're saying 90s stuff, are you talking like synths, like?
Yeah, anything that was high tech at that time. I mean, a lot of it you can repair because it was very reliable and still is, and a lot of the peripheries you might, if there's the processor's not doing anything at all, and then you check things like the reset circuit that might not be working, or the oscillator, crystal oscillator or whatever it might be, which may not be functioning, things like that, or physical damage to the board. You can look for things like that. And so there's still quite a lot you can do to fix things, but there are times when, depending on what it's worth, it's not worth doing. I suppose everything's more or less fixable in the end if you want to spend a lot of time on it. But you come back to the customer and say, I spent 125 hours deciding it was this. And,
deciding that you actually should just buy a new one.
Well, I only paid 50 quid for it. But
that is the trade-off sometimes, isn't it, for people. It's like, oh god, I really want it. Like, the trade-off of the cost of repairing it outweighing the cost of the actual unit.
Yes, quite often I have to just bite the bullet and decide, well, I want to get this working, for the relationship with the customer and the fact that it needs to be working, this piece of equipment should be working, and I'll stick at it until it is, and then just charge what the customer's probably expecting to pay and absorb the rest. That does happen sometimes, but
it must be nice to like get new strings to your bow as well, to like pick something up and go, I've never done that sort of thing, but it's nice to discover new things. So in terms of like rare synths, what sort of, or any piece of gear, what sort of stuff have you worked on that's like you don't see?
Well, I've done some. I did an Ons Martinon. Have you heard of those? Yeah. French thing designed in the 20s. Sort of valve synth really, and there's a nice chap called Francois Evans who owns the one that used to be used by the guy who did the music for Thunderbirds and all those.
Jerry Anderson?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Jerry Anderson produced it, didn't he? But the guy who did the music.
I
don't know, the original Ons Martinon, which made all those sort of theremin type sounds that on all those old TV programs. I worked on that one. That was pretty interesting, and it comes with all these sort of speakers and gongs and stuff like that all attached to it and make these weird noises that you can mic up. That's quite a good thing.
There's a very prolific player of that instrument. I'm not going to try and pronounce it because I will get it wrong, but there's a guy who is like the guy who plays that at the moment.
I think Johnny Greenwood's got one as well, hasn't he?
Has he?
I think so,
That's cool. I mean, like things like the GX20. Have you ever heard of the GX20, the Yamaha GX20?
I've not seen one though. ABBA had one, didn't they?
I think ABBA had one. Aphex Twin supposedly has one, and I think there's like 15 or something of them in the world, and I think they're worth 20 grand about 10 or 15 years ago.
Yeah, they've shot up, haven't they? I think a lot of old rare synths. I saw 12.5 grand for a Jupiter 8 the other day, and
wow, really?
I repaired a couple of CS80s, the Yamaha,
nice.
Late 70s polyphonic, one of the first polyphonic synths. They're amazing.
It's the Vangelis one.
That's right. they're fetching massive money now as well. But then it's because it's really hard to find one that works and find someone that can repair it. There are people, but I think that's where you have to pay for the skill, and then it becomes worth more, because it's like a classic car, isn't it? You know, they're shooting up as well, because you need to, every time you've restored it, you've spent 300,000.
Yeah. And then you've got to really look after it. I think that was one thing I'd like to ask you. Really, is like for advice for people who do own synths and they do own like vintage gear. Is there anything you could say that any advice for like looking after them or keeping them or storing them, for example?
Well, batteries are the worst things, aren't they? So some synths really suffer from leaking the batteries to store the internal memories. They can totally ruin things like a Korg Poly 6. Although there are people like Andy, the synth professor, who's made a clone one. So he's helped us out there, but there are cases where it just totally the electrolyte comes out the battery and migrates through everything, through wires, up tracks, and it can make its way across boards and just destroying everything on its way.
Yeah, it's like a warpath, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've seen it on like VL tones or you know, SK1s, and it's just like, damn it,
so
it's like a virus,
if
isn't
you've
it?
had one in the loft for 25 years, it's probably best to take the battery out and risk losing your presets.
Yeah, fine. Risk losing the presets rather than the
or
actual
at least get
synth.
it changed.
Yeah, definitely. I think rust is the first thing that I check if I'm buying a piece of gear in the battery compartment. If there's rust in there, straight away.
Looks like rust. Yeah.
Got to be careful with it.
Keep it out of dust, because dust and dirt gets inside all the potentiometers, and if it's an analog synth with like 20 potentiometers, one for each control more or less, isn't it? And that they can cause problems, and some of the potentiometers you can't really find now if you want exactly the same one that fits in the same footprint of the circuit board. Again, there's a way around it, but if they get destroyed, it can be flushed out and cleaned very often. But same with key contacts, dust and dirt gets under those. Again, it can be cleaned, but if you can not let it get dusty in the first place, that would help.
Yeah, I did. I left a DX. I've got a DX7 at my parents' house that I left in the attic. And I said to someone, I was stuck in the attic. They're like, "Oh, don't leave it in your attic. No, it's a bit damp. You know, you shouldn't leave it there. Just put it in a normal room."
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, I don't know. It's not, maybe it shouldn't be damp in the attic, should it?
No, I don't know. Like, it's not. I wouldn't.
You get extreme temperature changes, don't you? But I guess that may not be too bad. But again, dust is bad in attics a lot of the time, depending on what the attic's like. But if it's all the tile cement drops off and goes in them.
That's true. Cobwebs as well. I think there was a ton of cobwebs in that DX when I opened it, when I first got it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one.
Well,
to
talking of bad things like that, those did you hear about those ones I repaired for Gary Numan? He moved to LA recently, didn't he? From again, he lived locally, and he had an outbuilding and in the roof. When he cleared it out, he found some old synths that he'd forgotten about and had been there for 30, 40 years.
Nice.
Including a Mini Moog and an Oberheim OBXA. And he invited me around to his house to see if I could do anything with them, and they were in such a state. I've got pictures on my Facebook website.
Have you? Right.
Yeah,
brilliant. I'll link to them.
Like birds' nests inside them and holly growing through it, and it was filthy dirty, and something had been rubbing on the wood for ages, and so I thought it might be retrievable, but I had a go. He said he wasn't that bothered about it. He said don't spend too much time on it, see if you can get it going, and don't spend too much money on it. And so but I had them a while and managed to get them looking really good and
nice.
Working in the end.
Well
And Fenton ended up with them. I think you mentioned him, didn't you?
Yeah.
When they were on tour in America, they took it. They showed a picture. They went to see Bob. It was just after Bob Moog, we should be saying, shouldn't we?
We should
died,
yeah.
And I think his daughter's taken over, and they showed her at the Moog factory the restoration, because it was one of his old ones that possibly even our friends Electric Days he'd used. And
that's incredible. How did that come about that Gary Numan approached you to?
Well, it was funny really, because I just got an email and I thought it was a sort of joke or someone playing a prank, because it just said something like, "Hi Andy, I've got some old synths that need fixing. Any chance you can have a look? Cheers, Gary Numan."
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like a joke, doesn't it? Synths, Gary Newman. Very casual. And so I wasn't sure if it was him or not, because at the time this was probably 12 years ago or something like that, and I hadn't.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't in the public eye so much then, so I wasn't even sure whether he was doing music or not, and I certainly didn't know he lived around here, so I just said, like I would to any other customer, yeah, fine, drop him off sometime. And then he did. He turned up here and opened the door, and I said, "Oh, it's Gary Newman." He's exactly like I remember it. He said, "Yeah, of course." So I wasn't sure it was you. He's a very natural, nice guy, as everyone says, but but he's not bothered about the old stuff really. He
not precious
move
about
on.
it.
No,
yeah,
he's quite happy to sell it all and buy new things and keep moving forward with sounds, which is good as well.
Yeah, definitely. Don't stagnate and don't live in a world of nostalgia forever, because time moves forward, doesn't it? And
you but he'd say things like, "Is that OBX? I think I used that on Berserker album, but see if you can get it going." And it's very casual, and he's given me quite a few bits over the years, and until he moved obviously to LA, but he's still using his band from around here, so I'm still in touch with a lot of those. Some of those anyway, David Brooks and Aid a bit, and his keyboard player, so they still give me some bits here and there.
That's good. Yeah, Aid's a really cool guy. And it was great to interview him and speak to him. I sort of knew him from, we had a lot in common in terms of like where we would go clubbing. I'd be like one of the punters and he'd be one of the headlining DJs. It's really cool to go and speak to him and just talk about those days.
Yeah, he's a cool bloke. He's done some good stuff, hasn't he?
Yeah, definitely. And what's that noise, by the way?
Oh, that sounds like a crying baby.
Yeah,
but it's next door's. It's a little engraver.
Oh, okay. Should be just so we can make it clear that it's not a child.
Why doesn't someone help that poor baby?
So ignore it, I'll go to sleep in a minute.
But another thing that's, talking of rare stuff, on my Facebook website is a very early EMS sequencer which I got going, and that was I think Analog Solutions. They sent that to me to be repaired, and I think that hardly any of those were made, I think, so that was something that was quite rare.
Is that the sort of battleships looking one with the pins and the matrix? Is that the EMS? Am I thinking of the...
Well, EMS did do...
They did?
Yeah, they did do that suitcase synth like that, didn't they?
VC something, yeah.
This was sort of a big upright thing. You can see it on the video on my Facebook when I finally got it going. It's really early digital, which is amazing. 1974 or something like that.
Really? And it's digital?
Yeah, the sort of thing that The Who used at the beginning of Barbara O'Reilly, I think. Could be wrong there, I'm sure someone will correct me.
Yeah, you can make sure you get it right. That's cool. Yeah, I mean, going back to like fixing keys and stuff, I remember I had a Genesis X1000. That was the first analog synth I bought, and one of the keys was a bit knackered, and I opened it up to try and fix it, and it looked like basically every key had essentially a bit of guitar string that was connected to a metal bar. Yeah. So I did a sort of hack fix on it, which was just soldered an actual guitar string to underneath it, and it worked. It worked really well, did it?
Yeah, they are quite similar, aren't they? One of them, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the actual one that's in there is way more flimsy than a guitar string. It's quite doesn't have much resistance. So the guitar string worked really well in sort of botching together effects of my own.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of them are gold plated, and people make the mistake of braiding it to clean it, but they end up rubbing the gold plate off and losing the contact really. So you should always just sort of use some contacts cleaner, or just carefully wipe it with a bit of leather or cloth or something like that.
Yeah. It's a good synth to look at, the Gen SX 1000, to open up and look at it, because it's so simple. Have you ever fixed one, or
probably? Yeah, I think I know what you mean.
Yeah, it's like an Italian mono synth, 1970s. All of the controls are on the top panel, single oscillator, monophonic, and you open it up and you can just see, that's the filter board. Yeah, that's the envelope. That's the oscillator, and that's nice, the power, and they're all separate boards, so it's like, it's really easy to look at and just sort of understand. Yeah, do you know roughly like how many pieces of equipment you fixed over the years?
Yeah, I did try and think about that in the last few years, because I think now, I suppose there was a time when I was not all fixing music equipment all the time, so I decided if we take, say 20 years, forget the first couple of years, and now I probably repair 300 to 400 items a year.
No, wow.
So if you add that over 20 years, it's nearly 10,000 items.
Yeah.
It probably isn't as many as that, but
incredible.
It's close, I would think, yeah. So
that's cool. And do you have yeah, that's a lot. I mean, that's a lot of help for people. That's a lot of music being made.
Yeah, it's kept a lot of things going, hopefully.
From that, yeah. And what were sort of most gratifying things to fix? What like really stands out to you?
There's two ways it's gratifying. Sometimes if it's something that I can repair quite quickly, something like a Fender Hot Rod Deluxe or something, I like fixing those. They're very easy to get the back off, and pretty much anything that's wrong with it, I'm going to be able to find out what that is in an hour or so, within an hour. And the spares are usually quite, I can get them quite easily, so something like that is quite gratifying, because you can open it up and do the job and close it, done, and that's quite nice. And the other thing that's gratifying, I suppose, like this Prophet 10 that I've had here for a year or so, which was in the right state, and that has taken a lot of hours. The customer's been very understanding about it, but I've taken, fault found and replaced over 40 failed chips in it. I think I read there's this condition called metal migration, which can happen to old Logic of the 70s and 80s, and it just fails on its own in the end.
Right.
And so something like that, you really want to get it fully working and tuned and calibrated and like new, but it's a big job. It's very different from someone's coming in and saying, can you fix this?
Fix my SK1 for me.
Yeah, like you take a car into the garage and say, that it's got a flat tyre, and that's fine. But if you take a car in the garage and say, well, the exhaust's blown, the camshaft's blown, the pistons are missing, the wheel bearing's broken, the radio's not working, it's rusty.
It turns on fire every time I start the engine.
It just becomes equivalent of 100 different repairs in time-wise.
Yeah.
I think that's partially why they're becoming so expensive, because they sound great and people want to hear them, but they're not that easy to keep going.
Yeah, I know someone who collects a lot of synths and keyboards, and he's starting to think, like, if I keep all of these, they're going to break at some point, and it might be worth getting the money for them now, rather than keep this whole big collection and potentially have them break down.
When do you jump off there? They're always going up, aren't they? But
exactly. I bought a Juno. Yeah, I've got a Juno 6, which I bought off someone for £400 not long ago.
Nice.
A couple of years ago. But I found out he paid £40 for it.
40
£40 for the Juno 6. So yeah, I mean, I'm thinking, like, I don't really use it. I could sell it. I modified it. It has a new chip in it, which is makes it a Juno 66.
Oh, yes,
with chord memory and all that sort of stuff. So it's like, when do I do I hold on to? Because it's basically doubled in value since I bought it. It's at least 800, maybe $1,000 for a Juno 6 alone.
Exactly.
So, but yeah, like, yeah.
I think they're mostly repairable. You know, there are terrible stories, like I said, in some cases, but usually you can, if it's more or less working, you can find out what's wrong with it and get it going in a couple of hours. It's not the end of the world financially, especially as it is worth money. But the 60 is still very usable. I repaired one for Joe Mount from Metronomy, and
really,
I think Django, I repaired one for them as well.
The sequential circuits, it's Prophet 10. Is it Prophet 10?
Yeah, that is.
It's so it's just so big. I never realised sequential circuits made anything that big with the two-tier keyboard.
Any bigger than that, but yeah, that was 2 Prophet 5s in a box, really.
Yeah, if it got any bigger, you could actually get inside. You'd have to get inside to fix it. Like, that's the next level up, isn't it?
That is nice though, because it opens up, hinges up like a car bonnet, and you've got access to everything. You can pull boards out. It's nicely designed, and Wine Country in California, they still support it as much as they can, and they send you a lovely manual and all printed out with fold out open circuits and things like
with
that.
Test points and things like that.
It's well written, and it's very helpful. It's better than trying to look at some dodgy scam on the computer.
I mean, the Transcendent 2000 that I have, I had to fix it. There was loads of things that weren't working on it, but there weren't any PCB scans that were that were like totally legible, so you couldn't tell if it was a 5 or a 6 or an 8 or a 7, and so I did eventually put together all of the different versions I could find, and I've remade the Transcendent 2000 main board as an image. I've shared it online, so you know exactly what components go well, and I got colour coded the capacitors and the resistors and all that.
Well done, yeah.
So it's nice.
It's nice when people do things like that. It's so. You probably don't get much gratitude, but I'm sure there's people all over the world that are grateful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the internet's a bit like that sometimes. You can give away things for free and it'll get hundreds of downloads and or whatever, and one person says thanks and one person says you're an idiot, and then you just feel like, why do I do this thing?
Yeah, you've done it wrong. But
with the that was my giving a little bit back to the community. But actually, what was really helpful in fixing that for me was the Sound on Sound forums. So the people on there that talked me through diagnostics of the power board, which I had no idea about, and literally talked me through every step of it, and I got it working basically through Sound on Sound through the forums on there. And I paid 2 or 3 of the guys a bit of money for their help. And one of them was really cool. He just said, give it to charity, give it to a charity of your choice. So it's nice to have that. The Synth community is a nice community, isn't it? It's good people.
Yeah, there are lots of very knowledgeable people in it, and a lot of nice guys, as you say. Yeah. But people, I think when it's online, there's a YouTube video on how to fix things and stuff like that. It means people quite often have a go when they shouldn't, and if you're not really sure what they're doing, you can end up. Well, in some cases, it can be really dangerous. I saw some modification to a power supply that I'd seen, and they put it back together incorrectly so that the metal shielding that's supposed to go around it, they put on the inside, shorting the live and the neutral straight to the output. So you pick up a barrel connector and it's got mains on it.
Whoa.
And then you plug it into your unearthed keyboard and it floats, and no one really knows until they brush past it or something. It was. I received that once, and so I had a go at fixing a switch mode AC adapter, which is, if you don't know what you're doing, you really shouldn't be doing it.
Definitely, I think that's definitely a good point. Don't do stuff that's within your
know where your capabilities.
I certainly know where mine are. I'm not going to go into why, but yes, that's true. So in terms of you said it was nicely designed in there. Do you have what synths do you sort of feel are really well made and well put together?
usually expensive ones. Really, it goes for a lot of it. Same with mixing desks and guitar amps and things like that. I think as you run big productions on things to bring the price down, it usually means that all the components end up on one board, and it's not very serviceable. But like a decent mixing desk will have each channel strip on a removable board, and you can just. The idea is you replace them, I suppose, if you're in the middle of a project, but you can fix it later. And the same with the decent synths. I think early sequential circuit stuff and EMU and a lot of those Silicon Valley companies of that time, late 70s and 80s, and they did things very nicely. But then they still do now, Wardorf and things like that. They make sort of modular stuff that's still well supported, I think.
Yeah, Vermona's always been a good brand for build quality. Whenever I've used one, it's just feels incredible.
Yamaha are great. They're very well supported with their spares, and you can look up, if you've got access, you can look up and find out what spares they've got and how much they are and how available they are, and they can give you all the circuit diagrams all online, and they were very helpful. And just the big well-known companies, really, they've got the money to do it well, haven't they?
And have you ever been tempted to use your knowledge to make a synth or make pedals or something?
A little bit, yeah. I would quite like to have a product, because I think it's a good thing to do, because once you've got it working, and if people want it, you can just sell it in the background, and it keeps an income drifting in, as well as being an interesting thing to do. But it is very time consuming to do something that hasn't really been done before, that it needs to be well designed and thought about. The big companies have teams of engineers working on things for a couple of years, and in terms of man hours, that's a lot, isn't it? So I couldn't just take 3 years out of them working and come up with this great design, and I don't really have time to do it in the background. So I sort of don't really do design. I did make having said that, I did make an active DI box once.
Oh, that's cool.
Which was okay. I sort of got all the parts like a kit to build that with all the instructions and things like that, so I could do it quickly. But again, for the amount you can sell it for, it wasn't worth building, really.
Yeah, I think that your skills would be so. I mean, I'm guessing you can look at a circuit board and say oh, that's a ladder filter straight away. Can you see these usually familiar components?
Can decide what's doing what. Not always, because sometimes it's not very clear, and it can just be a sea of chips, and you don't really know what's going on, and that's when you don't always have to know exactly what's going on to fix it. If you just start with a few basic things like, are the DC supplies from the power supply present? Are they smooth? Is it taking too much current? Are there any shorts? And especially if it's a mechanical thing like a key not working or a broken pot or stuff like that, you don't really even need to know what's going on, or even what it is to some extent. Because you can. If the idea is to get it fixed as quickly as possible, and you don't need to do 5 hours back up reading on the service manual to really know all about it, and then open up and say, oh yeah, it's a fuse.
Just one potentiometer. You're right about cheap components, though. I seem to remember the Novation base station. You just see them everywhere, left, right, and centre, with broken pots and things, because it just build quality. I think
it's always
seems to be really bad.
It's always a trade-off. I think what the engineer wants to produce and what the marketing want it to look like, what the Treasury department want it, or the finance department want it to cost. They all come together to end up with whatever product you get. No one can do it ideally.
Definitely, which isn't to badmouth Novation, by the way. I do use I use a Novation A station in my band at the moment, and build quality for them has been really good in recent years. Yeah, particularly talking about the Mark 1 base station. Nothing else.
No, they've done some good stuff, haven't they? But also, people have to make things light now, because they send it all over with couriers, don't they? And you couldn't. I imagine currying a CS80 or a Prophet 10 is
it's
no joke, is it?
Or even the Akai samplers, the S3000 series, shipping them
That's
from
true.
an eBay sale.
Yeah.
I saw someone selling one the other day for £1.20 postage, and it was actually in Brighton, and I went to go and look at it, and I said, do you realise that you're going to charge £1.25 postage for this? And they totally messed up. They didn't realise that they'd said it at that, so they like took the auction off. But I was like, £1.20?
Yeah.
Joking? That's like times that by 100.
Yeah. And then it arrives broken if you haven't got the right packaging.
Yeah. Do you do that? Do you offer like postage on things?
Not really. Sometimes people send things. Well, quite often people send things to me, and I send them back. But I'm always a bit worried about it because you don't know what sort of journey it's going to get, and it's good if people have got the original packaging, which they usually haven't. But, I've had send out a powered speaker or something like that, and it's arrived with the magnet off the back of the speaker, so it's like it's fallen out of an aeroplane or something. Even though it was very rugged and wrapped up and boxed, it's obviously a massive impact at some point, and you don't get any insurance generally because they just say you didn't pack it well enough, which I suppose is always an answer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely. I think it's a much safer way to have that, come here in person and
I prefer that.
Hand it over.
Or you can get a sort of man with a van type courier that's a little bit more money, but someone personally comes and picks it up and puts it, wraps it in blankets, puts it in the back of their van and drives it straight to the destination. I think that's a good way to do it if it's an expensive item or if it's a big item. But small stuff is fine, isn't it? You can send that about. But.
Yeah. I mean, I posted a DX100 recently that was in its original box, and I put that box in a box, so it was like there was no way that.
Oh yeah, I've got one of those. It was one of my first. Well, not one of the first, but nearly one of the first little synths. I bought one of those.
Yeah, they're great. I love the mod wheel in the picture. They're sort of on 86. The top corner.
Yeah.
So it's a nice expression compared to normally being down here. You've got like a bit of a rollover sort of with it.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But back to the courier thing for a second. I repaired an Odyssey for a guy from the Klaxons, and he sent a taxi from London to come and get it.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my god. That's amazing. Yeah, they've done a lot with the Chemical Brothers, haven't they? The Klaxons. I think
they did do a few songs, didn't they?
Yeah,
they were at the studio, at the Chemical Brothers studio. They recorded it there. Yeah.
What was it? It was the opening track, All Rights Reversed. It was the opening track to We Are the Night. That was it. It was the opening track to We Are the Night, and I think they appeared on a couple of others. Just and you were accredited on one of the Chemical Brothers albums.
Yeah, it was nice of them. Yeah, I think I've been repairing stuff for Tom Rowlands for 10 or 11 years now, and I quite regularly go to their studio to keep things going, and or they bring stuff up occasionally, and that was an unexpected way of them saying thank you. Really, it just said thanks to Andy Collins for keeping the studio running right good.
Yeah.
So it was they gave me a signed copy of that, which was really nice.
That's incredible.
Yeah, we're pleased with that. It's nice to get some gratitude sometimes, isn't it? Other than just the money,
Exactly, that's what you do it for, I suppose.
Yeah. Also, I like to. If you are repairing something for a customer that's making music that gets heard, and then it's nice to listen to the music and think, oh, that's the instrument I repaired. You can identify the sounds I can identify the sounds quite often and know that the instrument I repaired for them is being used. Or I remember going to Glastonbury one year and walking around, and I saw 11 items that I'd repaired for certain bands being used. Yeah, I was counting it up. I mean, they have like thousands of performances, don't they? But I counted 11 things that I fixed. Keep your fingers crossed that it lasts the gig.
Wow, and it's being used at Glastonbury, like the sort of pinnacle music festival in the UK.
And you think, is that Is that in tune? Did I tune that nicely?
Yeah, what's happened with the pulse width on that?
Yes.
Tuning right.
I remember that transformer was very hot in the power supply. I hope it holds out.
Yeah, that's really, really, really cool. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that side of it for you. The fact that you can hear the thing that you did in that album. Essentially, in a roundabout.
Sometimes it's buried, but other times it's quite obvious that it is that instrument, and you can recognise certain presets of certain instruments as well. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, just to keep on the chemical for a second, I remember I came around here and you had the Juno. Was it the Juno 60 that had "Hey Boy, Hey Girl" preset on
106, Juno 106. Yeah, that was amazing because that's one that they use on their tour. When they tour, they use it as a sort of master keyboard, I believe. I don't know exactly how they set it up, but they got some sounds in that, and it's also triggering other stuff. And the filter fader was just worn out completely.
It's always the first.
Nearly all the faders, but I'm sure the filter gets a hammering, and it was sort of rubbed off all the carbon track off it, and a lot of the key contacts were playing up, the mod wheel, the pitch bender were broken, the jack sockets, the solders were dodgy. They must have used it so much, it's just really worn it out. The paint was worn off, but we managed to get nearly everything changed on it and recalibrated.
Brilliant. Yeah, I mean, then that's so much. That's British musical history in one piece of equipment, isn't it? Hey Boy, Hey Girl.
Yeah, the presets with the labels on it. That's great, isn't it? With the different songs.
Yeah, seminal music. That was the Surrender was such a huge album. Yeah, everyone knows that track, Hey Boy, Hey Girl, don't they?
Yeah, it's fabulous, wasn't it?
Yeah, really.
And they still do really great stuff. I think they're sort of changing, but they're unusual. I mean, Tom Rowland's a very knowledgeable guy, and he's got a lot of access to a lot of equipment, and he really knows how to use it, and he can put it together very interestingly. They even quite often make their own drum sounds from scratch, and they do everything with synths. Really, it's not software based as far as I know, and although some of it is, but they've got so much stuff that they do everything from scratch, and that when you think of it like that and you listen to it from that point of view, you really got to take your hat off to them, how they manage to create these exciting sounds all the time, and these good little riffs and bass lines and mini moogs and things like that, and a lot of modular stuff.
Exactly, it's like mastery. It's sort of like it's really been crafted. Every element is.
Yeah, it's very different to grabbing a few samples and dragging them onto a door, isn't it? And then playing around with it. It's almost the same, but that little bit of difference is another 20 years and loads more equipment here.
Yeah, with like dedication and and like trial and error as well. Like musical trial and error.
Yeah,
making the weirdest sounds you can possibly get to a point of like, wow, that's really cool. What have we done there?
Just something that has some character that grabs you is difficult, isn't it? You don't necessarily know it until you hear it, do you? But
yeah, they've definitely trod that line between like super weird and wonky while still being able to be very popular and great on the dance floor, which is sort of what they're about, isn't it?
Yeah, I'll go to their gigs as much as I can, usually at least once a year, and they're doing something in London or whatever, and it's always really exhilarating. Massive video display as well above them. They've got some really good videos and graphics and lighting, and some good people that work with them. I was thinking with the career path you were asking me, something a bit of a name dropping that I forgot to get in, which was the band that we went on to form. Obviously they weren't really big, but they were quite popular locally, and they called The Gift, and they were managed at one point by a guy called Andy Stevens, who unfortunately died quite young, but he had a business called MG Cargo, I think, and he used to transport equipment around for big name bands, including Sting and the Spice Girls and Wet 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 at the time, and I sort of tagged along with that for a little while as well, and that was sort of responsible for getting equipment again sort of in the music business. That's why I mentioned it, it was getting everything stacked up and into the aeroplane, ticked off of what exactly you've got, and then at the other end, as the roadies unpack it all, tick it off, make sure it gets onto the stage, and then when it gets packed up again, ticking off everything on the list in the it was Sting tour I went on, 3 lorries with that, making sure all the everything ends up back on the plane for the next gigs. That was something that was quite interesting to sort of went to Sting's house a few times, went to his studio with that, and played some of his guitars and things like that with via him. So that was another good sort of step into the right people, really. So I repaired some of the band stuff at that time, some of Sting stuff and some Wet 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 stuff, and
nice.
So that's another sort of lucky thing that got me involved with it, really.
Yeah, that's great. I wanted to ask you about sort of whether you've been on tour with any bands or anything.
Yeah, not other than that, no. And I wasn't employed as a repairer, but I did repair something when we were back here, but at that time I was just sort of as I say, making sure things got in the right place at the right time.
That's cool. Were you secretly hoping like the guitarist got a bit ill at some point in the tour and they were like, Andy, you can play guitar?
I'm not sure I would like to have been thrown in that situation.
50,000 people are waiting.
Yeah, funny, didn't you feed in that sandwich earlier? No, that was catering.
Yeah, oh, that's amazing. Nice. Have you ever had any like high pressure jobs where the turnaround's got to happen in like a matter of hours?
Yeah, I don't like those, but it does happen, and usually with bands. I fixed some Vox AC30 amps for the Foals once, and they were they said something like, can you pack them up and send them to France by Friday or whatever, so it was a bit so it wasn't really my expertise in getting stuff sent to France and packed up and stuff like that, and then so that was a hell of a sort of rush around. It's just like a couple of days to sort of revalve them and repair them and get them out.
Yeah, and the logistics of getting them there is another
I don't know why
they
trusted me with that, but I think.
Did you get a taxi from London to take it?
Should have done.
That's really cool. Yeah,
and I think Metronomy a little bit. Can you quickly come and fix this synth for we need it for the album. It's when people are recording stuff and they realise it's not working and they've got guests in the studio, and I think that then sometimes you get called out, and not necessarily for well-known people, but anybody really that's needs it done at that moment, and I try my best to help them.
Yeah, I guess it can be panic. They can panic if they've got the studio booked and they've had this time planned months in advance. Well,
I had a call from Tim Rice-Oxley from Keane to say, can I come and calibrate an ARP 2600 that their producer has brought in, and it's out of tune and they're recording there and then, and I would have loved to have helped out, but I was on holiday, so I was just like walking down the beach and saying, sorry.
Can you do the diagnostic over the phone then?
Can I do it next Monday? Not really.
I expect you're probably at a level where you could help people fix it just by on the telephone from the beach of wherever you are, the Caribbean.
That'd be nice, wouldn't it? Yeah, just stay on holiday and become a consultant.
Yeah, there's quite an interesting thing with like the price of synths changing and like things being in fashion and going out of fashion. So like 808 and 909s and SH101s and TV303s are like the classic staple
Yes.
investment synths, aren't they? But there's some where, for example, like Aphex Twin made that album with a cheetah synth,
Yeah.
and suddenly that became hugely popular.
Yeah, it's things like that trigger things being popular, isn't it? Like just an article or someone's used it or something turns up on the internet and praising it, and then suddenly everybody gets them repaired. Or quite often I have groups of the same item come in at the same time for whatever reason. That might be something like that.
Yeah, what sort of stuff comes to mind?
Well, just anything. Quite often, like I've got 3 Emu PK6s here.
Yeah, God, I
which
know.
you brought in 2 of them, but then they were from separate people, and I had another one come in as well, and I don't think I'd seen one before that, and now I've got 3. I've got 2 Roland Alpha Junos just arrive. For some reason, things often come in pairs. I've got 2 PPG waves there.
Have you? Oh wow, I didn't even notice them.
Wow. On the top there.
Nice.
But yeah, I think it could be coincidence, but it also could be that people respond to people using them.
Yeah.
And the cheetahs were quite good, weren't they?
It was great, because I have one under my bed, which is an Evolution EVS1 rack mount. It's a pre-FM synth,
right?
And I think that's going to be one of those types, because it's quite rare now. I haven't seen one on eBay for maybe years, but it's a great sound. It's really fat. It's a big digital sound.
I think that's the point, isn't it? If it makes a sound that other instruments don't make, and then it'll always be popular, I think. I say always, and still maybe soft synths will take over eventually, but people still like to twiddle knobs and end up somewhere where they don't know where they're going to get.
Exactly.
If you're faced with a load of presets and a mouse, not really the same feeling, is it? But
no, it's totally different.
Maybe, outboard gear, plug out stuff is getting more and more popular. I'm sure they'll find a way around it. And maybe people, as the generation that doesn't remember analog synths disappears, maybe there won't be an interest in them. I don't know.
It'll be like antiques dealing in a weird way, won't it?
Yeah.
I don't know how.
Yeah, I suppose so. People still want to buy an Aston Martin DB5, don't they? Because James Bond had one, and I'm sure the new Aston Martin's better in every way, but it's not the same. It doesn't smell the same, and it doesn't. It's something about the experience, isn't it?
Yeah, and like the sound of the engine and the handling and all that stuff.
Idiosyncrasies that are with it,
Yeah, and what for you are like your favourite synths? What do you love the sound of, or
favourite to work on, a favourite to listen to?
I think to listen to. Yeah, like I guess working on it might be fun as well.
Yeah, they're not always the same thing. Yeah, it's nice to work on it, but sometimes some of the ones that sound nice are a pain to work on. But I like things like the SH101 because it's quite basic, and yet it makes some really good sounds quite quickly, and you can spend ages playing with it. And all the Juno range as well. The 106, as you say, is great.
It's dark, yeah. It's really dark.
And but then there are some, the more expensive stuff like the Yamaha CS range, like that 80 that I spoke about earlier. That they're very musical. And it's amazing that I don't think people would ever be able to make something like that anymore. It's just got this massive loom in it, like a car, and these long wooden keys, like 12 inches long.
Really, is it?
Yeah, and a massive component count.
Yeah, I mean they've remade the CS80, haven't they? Deckard's Dream is a rack mount CS80 you can buy as a kit. It's like $4,000 for just the kit. Components and like the pile of resistors that you need is.
Yeah, I'm sure
they
must have cut a few corners again, because a lot of the original voice chips were Yamaha bespoke ones, which are not available anymore. Really, I've been looking for one for a couple of years now. There was a time when they'd turn up, and if you needed it, you could get it, but they're just not coming up anymore.
Right. Yeah.
Someone needs to do a clone of that.
Yeah. Yeah, they must have done something.
IG153 or something it's called, I think, that chip, but I don't think anyone has at the moment, but I don't know what they've done with that one.
Yeah, well, they're definitely on their second iteration of it, so there was maybe some things that customers weren't happy with. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not technically minded enough to.
Yeah, I wonder what they've done for the oscillator sound.
Yeah, I'm sure they've gone as close as they possibly can. Do you keep up to date with like modern synth things?
I don't make an effort to. No, I just see them come through the door, I suppose, and I do some sort of repair work for some modern stuff. It's not all vintage stuff. I do a lot of warranty stuff for Casio and Black Star guitar amps, and some Yamaha stuff, Roland stuff, Waldorf stuff. So I do see it, but I only know as much as I need to know to get it working, really.
Yeah. The range of things you fix. So you've mentioned PAs, synths.
Yeah, I'd say any
pedals.
Electronic music equipment, really. So that pretty much covers everything. It is a wide range of technologies as well, because you can be working on a valve amp from the 50s or 60s, and then working on a digital synth, so that there's a hell of a lot of different knowledge base that you need to be able to repair both of those items. It's sort of, I've gone along with it because I've been doing it so long now, but I like to also high-end hi-fi. I do that as well if it's worth doing, and I'm very interested in good hi-fi, especially now that you can get really good quality downloads from Tidal, and there's not many actually. Spotify is not hi-fi really, but Tidal do master quality.
Do they?
Which is really nice. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
If you pay for it, you can get sort of equivalent of 24-bit 96 kilohertz sample rate studio quality. And if you've got, hi-fi is really interesting because you can find a really good, nicely designed amplifier, some really good speakers, a nice DAC now, and the results are amazing. You like re-listening to your collection, and suddenly hearing instruments that didn't. I've always tried to keep my hi-fi at home as good as possible, upgrading it every time I spot something else. And,
nice.
And when people come round and you play them a song they're familiar with, they say, I didn't even know it sounded like that,
Yeah.
I think it's something that's got lost over the years because people are just listening with their phones and computers and MP3s, and but I'm hoping it'll come back. I think as qualities get better and broadband speeds get better and the price of things goes down.
Yeah, that sort of thing. Well, I remember I lived in Russia for a little while, and I remember when people would give me like MP3s of Russian songs, it would be a really low quality, like like MP3, and I remember thinking, how can people listen to that and not think that that's a really low quality MP3, but people were sharing it as if it was a normal track, and I guess you can hear the track in there, but that's not experiencing it like you're talking about, is it?
Part of the pleasure of hearing music is the quality of it for me, and it is for the people that record it as well, isn't it? And the job of the producer, and they spend ages finding the best mic preamps and the best mics and the best instruments, and that's a lot of it. The quiet bits are quiet, the distortion's very as low as possible, and you recreate what it would sound like if they were sitting in front of you, is the idea of a good hi-fi design.
It's quite funny, I've never really thought about it, but like the signal, like you said, like the producers and everyone who knows their stuff, the musicians, every single component in the order of the signal path is like the best that they can possibly get, like the mics, the preamps,
which should be,
the amplifiers, the guitars, whatever it is, the synths and stuff, and then it gets to the end consumer who plays it on a mobile phone.
That's right,
and fucking don't forget all that. Total waste of time. You might as well have done it on GarageBand. It's funny, it's strange that, isn't it? I've never thought about that. It gets to the last part of the chain, the person who's actually listening, and
then you wonder what they're actually listening to.
I mean,
obviously melody is one thing, but a lot of songs don't really have melody nowadays, do they? I mean, there's some great like hip hop production again, which you're not really hearing, and then a rapper or something who's sort of more lyric based than melody based usually. So what they're actually hearing, I'm not really sure. What they're enjoying.
The hi-hats, maybe.
Yeah.
Or the ratcheted hi-hats.
Yeah,
that's what you hear. I mean, I'm getting to the age now where I hear like trap music with the hi-hats going.
Oh yeah.
And I just think all of that music sounds the same, because of that hi-hat pattern.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I've got a housemate that listens to music like 24/7 on her phone and laptop, and all you can ever hear is like. And my feeling is you've got to hear the bass, you've got to feel the bass.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like that's part of the experience of the music is to feel it a little bit.
Yeah, it's like getting a graphic equalizer and pushing up 1K and turning everything else down.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, sounds great to me. Like the beauty of seeing, I remember seeing Left Field. Do you know the group Left Field? I remember seeing them live, and your guts, your organs in the body are shaking, and you're looking at each other, like your whole chest is feeling this music.
Didn't they do that song with the Sleaford Mods guys? I thought that was really good. It was one of my favourite tracks of a couple of years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, that album. What was it? It was without Paul Daly though, so it was like half of Left Field really. It was a good album that. Yeah, and I think they're still playing and touring.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff.
Really great band. And what else? What do you like to do away from this sort of stuff? Where do you find serenity, and what sort of things do you get up to aside from the synth?
I recently had twins, so I've got 2 baby girls now, which I left it quite late, so it's taken some getting used to, but that's enjoyable. So I spend. I've also got I own a bar in Eastbourne, which I can't spend so much sort of time looking after that as I used to, but I still keep an eye on that. And so with that and this place and the twins, that sort of pretty much takes up all my time really. But I like to get out now that I've got a family and the summer's coming. It's really great, and they've just learnt to walk, so we can go for walks and enjoy things that nature has to offer, and babies, and that's a new. What would have been, going out and partying and playing music has been replaced by that. But that's fine because I've done all the other stuff.
Exactly.
Well, not all of it, but a lot of it. Some of it, probably. That's
cool, man. And did you have twins in your family? Is that how that?
No, they're non-identical, so apparently that's non-hereditary.
Oh, is it?
So it's just chance, really, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So it's only the identical ones that are hereditary, I think.
Is it? I didn't know that. Oh, there we go.
But that's quite good because we've got instant family now. But
instant family, yeah. Family deluxe version.
Yeah. But it is quite hard work because there's always, you go out and they run off in different directions, and there's always one wants something or one's awake or whatever. But it's great fun anyway.
Yeah. So you have a website where people can contact you if they need stuff fixing?
Yes. I don't update it that much. I have a few things for sale that I don't really buy and sell stuff, but if things come my way one way or another, and usually through insurance repairs or write-offs or something like that, and I have some stuff for sale on there. I prefer people to sort of text or email really, because I think sometimes a phone call can really take you out of a zone if you're working through something and you're following a circuit and you're trying to trace something that's not working, and you're 10 components down the line and you're nearly there, and someone rings you up and says, can you come and whatever,
throws you off.
And then you have to get right back in the zone again. So but then again, you need to be able to answer the phone, I think, in a business. So I know some people who are in similar jobs, they put up things like "Don't phone me" or "Leave a message" or "Only phone me on Monday between 1 and 1:30" or something. You know. But I'm reluctant to do that because I still like to just sort of pick up the phone if I can. But
yeah, and you never know when somebody might really need your help.
Well, exactly.
They're going to appreciate that's.
Can you come and
Sunday
calibrate
evening.
an art for me?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah. So I don't spend too much time updating the website. I've got a Facebook page which has a couple of hundred followers that are always usually interested in things that I post that are interesting. You know, like servicing various things, photos and stuff like that.
Yeah, people love to see that, especially seeing the insides of Synth, because a lot of people I think are just scared to even open it up and look at it.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm probably too eager looking at stuff and tinkering with it, but I think it's nice to look inside. They are quite beautiful things, aren't they?
A lot of people are interested in it, and I think I take a photo of nearly everything I repair, usually because so that I can make sure it looks like it did, or everything's gone back in the right place. You know, there's a blue knob and a yellow knob. Which way around do they go?
Yeah.
So it's very helpful now having a phone that can easily take pictures, so you can quickly decide. You know, look at when you pull things apart, you want to make sure they go back together in the same way. So that's one way of doing it. You can see where wires go and which screws go where and stuff like that. And I've got a massive collection of photos, but I don't get a chance to put them up. I haven't really updated any of my websites or the Facebook page for quite a few months, but in theory I'd like to put a lot of stuff up there because I think it's good for it to be out there, really, photographs of all this gear inside and out.
Yeah. But I guess from your point of view, if you don't need to like generate more custom, with that, those sorts of things are probably going to do that eventually. So
I usually decline any offers from Google AdWords or Yell or something like that to put me more out there because there's only so much I can do, really.
Yeah, I think that's a good position to be in. Really.
Yeah.
Not like, you know, some people shouting on the internet, I'm doing the best thing, everyone take notice of it.
Yeah, I'm not really into that side of it too much. Despite my name dropping today, but
it's been quite minimal, really.
But some people are quite they underestimate, I think, the business and of what's involved. You know, they come up and say things like, I'm sure it's nothing simple, but I don't know anything about it, but I don't want to spend any money on it, but if you can just get it going for me, I'd need it by Friday, things like that, you know. And you say, well, you know, it could be, it's 40 years old, there could be loads of things wrong with it. And
exactly.
It's going to have to join a list of 30 items, and sometimes I try and get it through quickly if I can, obviously, but people say things like, can't you pass your meter over it and tell me what's wrong with it, like
your magic, like the magic sponge in
multimeter is going to tell me what's wrong with it.
Yeah. It says oscillator 1 out of...
Yeah, not quite at that stage yet.
That's what you should design, maybe, is like the electrical diagnostic tool which tells you what's wrong with the synth.
Yes, that would be nice. Put myself out of business.
Yeah.
But I had a guy that I spent quite a few hours working out what was wrong with this old American 80s sampling drum machine, and I was quite pleased in the end that I found out what it was, and then I phoned him up and he said, I'm not spending that much on it, I didn't want you to spend that much time on it, I'm not going to pay you a penny, I'm coming to pick it up now, you know. And they're just totally flippant and not really, a bit delusional about, you know, the amount of effort that's gone in for a price that's less than a fence or something like, you know. Certainly if you take your car to the garage, you nearly always come out with a 400 or 500 bill, don't you? And,
exactly. You have no idea what went wrong before or after. No,
I don't very often ever reach that sort of, well, I'd say sometimes, but not that often reach that sort of value, and yet people don't want to pay it because they see it as something that is almost throwaway and easy to repair. If you can repair things, then you can repair it, and I'm not paying that sort of money, so I get quite a lot of that. I get told when it's got to be done and how much it's going to cost, and you sort of resent that a little bit.
Yeah, it's difficult to predict that, isn't it? And maybe an analogy is useful for those people.
Yes.
To just put what they're thinking into some context.
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't know, it's like taking an animal to a vet, isn't it? It's like the animal's not right, fix the animal.
Yes.
Or tell me what's wrong with this animal. And it's like, well, I don't know just by looking at it.
No.
Yeah,
they would respect a vet or a doctor, wouldn't they? And the vet will come back and say it needs an operation, it's going to be £2,000, and they say, oh, okay. But I think certain things have a value, like a car or a house or an animal, that people are prepared to spend the money on. But if they just say, well, I'll go on eBay and I can buy one for that, or it's that's sort of one problem with the business, which is partially why you end up fixing things that are worth a lot, that have now become worth a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit of a shame because there are, most things can be repaired.
Yeah. So like the older stuff, like it's quite big. They're quite big components. Like I've had an old mixing desk that it's so easy to fix. Whereas things like the new boutique stuff, I think fixing those things is pretty much nigh on impossible with the size of the components in them. So sometimes going back with the vintage stuff, it's easier to fix.
Yeah, it's nice in that respect, isn't it? Because you can identify a component and pull it out and hopefully find another one and put it in.
Yeah.
That's why, the older stuff is good to repair. Especially like a lot of the 60s organs and Vox Continentals and Farfisas and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
They sound great and they've still got a very useful sound that people can use.
Yeah, a classic sound.
Yeah.
Like a classic sound.
And as soon as you get some high profile person that's used them, like Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd and things like that, and people want to use them to be inspired in the same way, don't they?
Yeah.
But they're often very big, that's the trouble with all these.
Yeah, they are huge. Actually, I was going to say about when you talk about photographing synths, I had a Viscount synth that I bought off someone for 99p on eBay in my hometown, and I was like, I agreed to take this from your house, but I need to dismantle it here and then put it all back together at home. So I did. I took about 50 photos of it, unscrewed it all in this guy's living room. He was just amazed, took my soldering iron. He was like, I can't believe you're going to take it all, because it wouldn't fit through the door. It was just too big to fit through their door. And I did. I rebuilt it back at my house. It all worked fine. He just hated it because I painted it, but I painted it with red paint, and the red paint had dribbled down it, so it looked quite gothic and dark. And I thought it was just funny, but he was he didn't like what I'd done with the actual body.
Did you see it then?
Yeah, I sent him a photo, and he was like, I don't really like the paint job you've given me.
My pressure's
I was like, fair enough, it's mine anyway. Great, well, I think it's a really amazing job you do, and you're really valuable to the musicians and to the industry.
That's kind of you to say that.
Yeah, and without people like you, stuff would just get lost and not get used.
Yeah, I suppose there's nearly 10,000 things that hopefully still kicking around that people can use. But
definitely, and the 13 things in Glastonbury as well. Or the 9 things, I can't remember how many.
11, I think I said.
Yeah, 11, right, well, yeah. Yeah, it's an incredible thing you do, and hopefully there's going to be people like you who continue to fix things.
Yes, I think it's dying out, isn't it? Because as I say, the qualifications I did are no longer available, but then again, there's more information on the internet, and people can build it up. But whether they want to make a living out of it once, like I said before, there's probably something else they can do to get more money. But
yeah, and don't follow YouTube videos which tell you.
Well, some of them are very good, and some of them are really dodgy.
Yeah. Cool. Well, it's been great to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Enjoyed it.
I have so much respect for Andy and what he does. He's incredibly skillful. As someone who has destroyed music equipment myself over the years trying to modify and fix it, people like him doing it professionally are to be treasured and respected. We wouldn't have the music from the Chemical Brothers, from Gary Numan, from everybody he mentioned on that list without people like him. Certainly the world would be a worse place if we just kept throwing things away that could still be used. It was a great chat on a very hot summer's day, much like today. And next month we've got the live artist that I mentioned on the previous episode. Because I don't know if you've noticed, I always get it wrong who's on the next episode because things change and life changes, doesn't it? But thank you very much for listening. I really appreciate the support. I'm midierror and this was Midierror Meets. See you again soon.